In this recording, I'm going to show how to do some more basic animation stuff, introducing Motion Sketch to be able to draw motion paths, as well as how to use the Auto Orient rotation feature to automatically rotate a layer in the direction that its animation path is taking it. And we'll also see how to import a layered Photoshop file as a composition, which saves you some steps as far as setting up an animation in After Effects. So what I have here is a Photoshop file with multiple layers. You can see I've got a picture of a racetrack, and then I've got 4 different colored cars on each on a separate layer. So this is pretty much ready to go, ready to bring over into After Effects and animate. So let me get out of Photoshop and then back over to After Effects here. I'll do a file import, and I'll find that Photoshop file. Now, when I get the Photoshop layer options here, instead of bringing it in as a single footage item, which only gives me the options of merging all the layers together or pulling out just one layer, I'll change it to one of these composition options. And when you bring it in as a composition, it brings it in with all the layers intact, all the layers automatically set up for you in a composition. Now, the difference here between just regular composition or composition using layer sizes is whether you want the size of the layers to be the full size of the Photoshop document or just the size of the actual pixels on each layer. And just like the recommendation I made in the other animation video, if you're gonna animate the basic transformation properties of the layer, the things like position and scale and rotation, you want to use layer sizes. So I'll choose that option. I don't have any layer styles. That would be things like drop shadows or outer glows, the kind of effects you can add to your layers in Photoshop. I don't have any of those on any of the layers, so I can ignore that, and I'll click OK. So you can see that in the project panel, that creates a composition automatically. You do not need to go to the composition menu and make a new composition because it's already done it for you. Just double click the composition, and there's your composition with the timeline, with all of the layers in the same stacking order and the same layer names that you had in Photoshop. Now, the other thing it did is it created a folder and it imported the individual layers as assets into that folder. So if you do want to use one of your assets again, you can easily do so. All right, so I'm in the composition. I'll go through my layers here. And the background layer is the picture of the racetrack. I'm going to click the lock switch to lock it in place. And then to help visually organize my timeline, I'm going to use the color label switch to color label my layers. I'll make the red car red, the yellow car yellow, and so on. And you can see that this changes the color of the layer in the timeline, and this will also affect the color of the layer handles up here in the viewer, as well as the color of the motion paths. So it does make it a little easier to tell your layers apart. Now I'm going to animate one of the cars going around the racetrack. So I'll just start with the red car and turn off the visibility for the other ones. Now in the previous animation lesson, I used position to animate position, and I did it by clicking the stopwatch and then plotting the position one keyframe at a time. And you could see that in a case like this, that's not going to be a very good way of doing this. It kind of begs the question, can we draw a motion path? And we can, and that's what I wanted to show you. So I'm going to undo what I just did. And instead of plotting the keyframes one position at a time, I'm going to go to my window menu, and I'm going to bring up the panel called Motion Sketch. So on my screen, a new panel appears. I'll go ahead and undock it. That way I can bring it over here alongside what I'm doing. And the way this works is it allows you to basically draw the position path. Now, if you just click Start Capture It'll tell you to go ahead and start drawing here in the info panel. It'll actually, if your info panel is showing, let me hit escape and come up here to my info panel. That way you can see what it says. When I click Start Capture, see it says click to begin capture, right? And if I click and start drawing, it starts recording my movement. But the problem that I have here is, well, one, I can't see the background. And two, I'm going to run out of time because I'm not drawing it fast enough. Okay, so that didn't quite work. Let me undo. And in the motion sketch panel, the things that I want to change here, capture speed. If it's 100%, that means it's recording it at the speed that you draw it. If you put a lower capture speed, it gives you more time to record your movement, which will result in faster movement. If you put a bigger capture speed, it takes less time, resulting in slower movement. So a little counterintuitive there. In this case, I have a 10-second timeline. If I put the capture speed at 50% instead of 100, it'll give me 20 seconds to draw 10 seconds of movement, and the resulting movement will be faster. The second thing is the smoothing value. I don't want it to record keyframes for every single frame. That will create an unmanageable number of keyframes. So I'm going to increase the smoothing value. The bigger the smoothing value, the fewer keyframes it will record. I'm going to check the box for background so I can still see my background layer as I go. Now I'll try again. Start capture. I click on the car and begin to draw a path around the racetrack. So you can see it's giving me more time, giving me 20 seconds to draw the path. And it's okay if I don't do it perfectly. Now, when I let go, it'll stop recording. So if I don't get to 20 seconds, when I let go of the mouse and stop drawing, it stops recording. Now you can see, because I put a smoothing value of 8, there's not a lot of keyframes this time. It's a much more manageable number of keyframes. Now you do want to go through your motion path and delete any unnecessary keyframes. I'm going to hit Command plus to zoom in, hold my spacebar down to use the hand tool, and I'm just going to kind of go through here. First, I'm going to actually, let me deselect the car layer to just deactivate everything. And then I'm going to click back on the car, but not on the word position, because if you click on the word position, it selects all the position keyframes. And I don't want to do that. I just want to be able to see the motion path without having all the keyframes selected. And that way I can click on individual keyframes and I can move them. I can adjust their Bezier curve handles. Again, hold down the space bar to be able to scoot the viewer over. And so you do need to take a moment, to kind of go around your path, make adjustments. There may be some extra keyframes you don't need, like maybe I don't need this one right here. See how close these keyframes here are together. So if I click on that one and hit delete, that'll get rid of it. Okay, so Motion Sketch is a great way to get started with your motion path, but it still takes, a little finessing to go around the path and clean it up, right? Getting rid of any keyframes you don't need, making adjustments by moving the keyframes or adjusting their Bezier curve handles until you have the path the way that you want it. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Looks like I have a couple extra keyframes here I'll get rid of. I'll get rid of that one. And I'll get rid of this one too. So just this one last keyframe here. There we go. Now let me zoom back out. It can be kind of hard to see the motion path against the background layer, so I'll hide the background for a minute. That'll help me see the motion path a little better. And that looks pretty good. Now if I hit play, of course it's going around going around the track, going around the path, but there's some obvious problems, right? For one thing, it's just pointing to the right. It's not pointing in the direction of the path. And then another thing is the speed that it's moving at. Well, first I'll deal with the rotation, with the pointing. And in the previous animation lessons, I showed how you can animate rotation manually by clicking the stopwatch for rotation and setting keyframes. But in a case like this, where I just want the layer to be pointing in the direction of its position path, there's an easy way to do that. You simply select your layer, choose Layer, Transform, Auto Orient, and then turn on that option. And now when I take a look at it, the car will be pointing in the direction of the position path that it's traveling along. So that's a useful feature to know about. Now let's talk about the speed that the layer is moving at. It's moving at pretty random, speeds, right? From keyframe to keyframe. These keyframes are all kind of in random locations based on how quickly I drew it, right? And the speed between each pair of keyframes is, not the same. So the car is kind of abruptly changing speed as it travels along. And there's a way of seeing that, of visualizing that, by using the graph editor. If I click on the word position, click on the graph editor button, and then for the graph type, see by default here it's showing me the value graph, which is X and Y coordinate values. That's not really very helpful in this case. So I'm going to click on the graph type button right here, and I'm going to change it to speed graph. And as a general rule of thumb, when you're working with position, if you want to be able to finesse the speed your layer is moving at, you want to use the speed graph, not the value graph. And so the y-axis of this graph is basically a speed value, pixels per second, kind of like, you're driving in your car, miles per hour, right? But in this case, it's a layer moving within our frame, so it's the speed value is pixels per second. And you can see we have a different speed between each pair of keyframes. That's what this is showing me. Okay, so between each pair of keyframes on the path, it is changing speed. It's pretty random here, at whatever speed I happen to be kind of drawing at, which is not really what I want. In this case, what I'd like to do is have the car moving at a nice constant speed from start to finish, and then I can go in and maybe add some acceleration or deceleration to the speed of the car. So to first get the speed to where it's the same between each pair of keyframes, what I need to do is select all the keyframes in the middle, all the intermediate keyframes in the middle of this path. And you can do this here in the graph, or you could be out here in the keyframe view. It doesn't really matter which. Just select all the intermediate keyframes in the middle, okay? And then you right-click on any one of them, and you choose this option called Rove Across Time. And watch what that's going to do to the graph. Boom, it turned it into a straight line from start to finish. So our layer is now moving at the same speed between each pair of keyframes, all the way from the beginning of the animation to the end. Now I'm going to undo that real quick though, because I want to show you what that does in the keyframe view when you choose Rove Across Time for those middle keyframes. Watch how the position of the keyframes on the timeline is automatically adjusted. See how After Effects automatically moved those keyframes to where they need to be on the timeline, so the speed is the same between each pair of keyframes. So that's a useful thing to know about when you're doing position animations if you want to have consistent or constant speed between your keyframes. Now, if I hit play and take a look, you can see the car is now moving at a nice, smooth, constant speed from start to finish. Pretty cool. Now I want to add a little acceleration or deceleration to the movement of the car. I want to make it speed up. I want to make it slow down. To do that, I'll go back into my graph editor, onto the speed graph, and I want the car to start from a speed of 0. So I'll select the first keyframe by right-clicking on it and choosing Keyframe Assistant. Oops, I don't have it selected. Let me zoom in here. I've got two keyframes very close together there, so let me zoom in on the time ruler. Right-click directly on that keyframe, and I'll do Keyframe Assistant, Ease Out. Adding an ease out to this keyframe will bring the speed value on the y-axis of our speed graph down to 0. So the car is basically starting from a standstill. Let me zoom back out on my time ruler there, and you can see what that did to the shape on the graph. And it also automatically redistributed the keyframes in the middle because they have that roving feature turned on. Now, if I want the car to accelerate quickly, I would drag the ease adjustment handle over to the left like that, so it's speeding up very quickly. Or if I wanted it to accelerate slowly, I would drag the ease adjustment handle further out like that. So in this case, I want it to accelerate quickly. And then at the end, the last keyframe, I'm going to add an ease in to that one, which brings the speed value to 0. So it's slowing down to a standstill. And then again, dragging the ease adjustment handle to control how quickly or slowly it is decelerating to a standstill. Now let's say I wanted the car to slow down and speed up out of this keyframe here in the middle when it goes around this corner. If I click on that keyframe to select it, I can see which keyframe that is on the graph. And then to slow it down into that keyframe and speed it up out of it, all I need to do is drag that keyframe down on the graph a little bit. Now, I'm not going to drag it all the way to 0 because that would bring it to a stop, right? That would make it come to a standstill. So I'll just drag it down just a little bit. Now, when you do that, though, that keyframe is no longer roving. That keyframe is now anchored in time. So if I look at my keyframe view, you'll see that that keyframe is now a Bezier type of keyframe with the curve handles on either side. Kind of the same thing as an easy ease, except the easy ease preset would bring the speed value all the way to 0. I did it manually by dragging it, so it's not really an easy ease keyframe. Keep in mind, the ease in and ease out and easy ease keyframes are just presets for the Bezier type of keyframe. And Bezier keyframe just means a keyframe that has handles, has curves on the value graph and ease handles on the speed graph. All right, let me preview that and see how it looks. So car speeds up as it goes and then slows down a bit at that corner and then slows down at the end. Pretty cool. Now, if I want to speed up the entire animation, I'll go to my keyframe view, select all my keyframes, and do the Option drag trick or Alt drag on your PC and scrunch the keyframes closer together to speed the whole animation up. I'll set my work area, hit play. Pretty cool. So if I wanted to make further adjustments to the speed, I could go back to the speed graph. I could figure out, like maybe I want it to slow down at this corner here, select that keyframe, and I could drag that keyframe down on the graph a little bit so it slows down a little bit into that corner, and so on. So this is how you can go ahead and add some speeding up and slowing down to the movement of the layer. All right, hope that helps to introduce how to use the speed graph to finesse your position animations, as well as introducing how to use motion sketch to freehand draw a position path, and using the auto orient rotation feature to automatically do the rotation for the layer. And I'll see you in the next video.